How's it going, folks? Jack here with another video. So over the last few days or very soon week, some of your favorite content creators would have showcased their first-hand impressions, their at times even previews, full-length gameplay sessions of missions that they've been allowed to show to you from FromSoft with regards to Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. A lot of them were invited to the Bandai offices and got to play the games just to give you a taste of what the game actually will feel like once it releases on August 25th. With that, of course, has been a lot of discussion on how the game feels, the performances, and is it still considered to be a Souls-like? Finally, that discussion has been closed. It is not. And some have had some takes that are less desirable than others. Now, today I'm going to be talking about the comments made by a channel that I actually appreciate quite a lot. Fextralife has provided me with some amazing guides, some builds for Elden Ring, especially when that game came out, and right now, since I am building up to playing Baldur's Gate 3, they are also going through some stuff there on their channel. So I genuinely respect their opinion when they dive deep to certain things. But this time around, I think that they kind of had a terrible take regarding Armored Core, and I kind of wanted to talk about that. Now, I do recommend actually going and watching the entire video so that some of the stuff that I'm saying is not taken out of context. It's but a small section of it, like close to the end, that is kind of like taking people the wrong way. But the video does make some good points, especially regarding the cross-gen nature of the game. But first, let us hear what he had to say.
And lastly, I want to talk a bit about the graphics of the game. This is kind of a sore point for me. The graphics of this game are serviceable, no doubt. But the game is made for last gen and this gen consoles. And so I think you're going to see it once again, the graphics of this game suffer, kind of the way Elden Ring's graphics suffered. Obviously, no one cares about the graphics of Elden Ring, right? Like, the game is good, it's phenomenal. Graphics are not the most important thing for Elden Ring. But I kind of feel like in a mech game, graphics are a little more important. Like, you want the combat to be as flashy as possible, as visually as appealing as possible.
Now, I do not agree at all with this statement. As he himself pointed out, Elden Ring is a game where we don't actually focus on the graphic, despite the fact that the game itself is still very gorgeous. Naturally, after having played the game, people realized that the graphics were not the main focus of it. But calling the look of Armored Core serviceable, I don't think is right. It's just in the right spot. And I'm actually quite surprised that it is not the other way around, because for the most part, when we're talking about things that actually require high graphic fidelity, we usually focus on games that actually let the player take the time to take it all in. It's the reason why a game like Cyberpunk 2077 was so insistent on having the game being played in first person and not third person, as so many people did complain about during its initial reveal. They wanted to make sure that every single thing that was sculpted and or rigged in Cinema 4D or whatever 3D software they used to make their assets was showcased to you and that you could witness it all up close. Is the reason why so many people make montages of Red Dead Redemption 2 and or The Last of Us, which are graphically intensive games that do have that graphical fidelity, but are also moving at a very slow pace. The same thing could be said about Elden Ring. You cannot tell me that after beating Godric the Minecrafted, passing his castle and standing upon that plateau, it didn't make you immediately think of Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich. It's a wonderful scene that actually made me believe that they were trying to emulate the painting, channeling that feeling of the wonders of the unknown and or the horrors of the known. And it wasn't because the graphics were ultra realistic. I know an Assassin's Creed game or two that has volumetric lighting that is even better than that, but the art direction, the style that they were going for, was the thing that made the emphasis for it all to work. And the same thing, I believe, applies here in Armored Core. The game is incredibly fast-paced. When you're flying around in your mech at Mach 5, the best thing that you are going to notice is going to be either the atmosphere, the laser beam, an enemy's proximity, or whatever piece of artillery that is flying towards your general direction. You can't but take the atmosphere at a few moments at a time, and if we're talking about a massive boss, then the last thing that you'll be noticing is whether or not the things that you're looking at have 5K textures or not.
And I feel like you're starting to notice how dated From Software's engine is getting in Armored Core 6. I mean, gameplay-wise, the game ran smooth. I was up above 60 FPS the whole time. There were no bugs, there were no glitches, there were no crashes. Everything ran great. And we've come to expect this from Software. They typically don't have these issues in their games at launch, so that's really good news. But I do wonder At what point are they going to make the leap to a new engine like Unreal 5?
Now, if I haven't already made it very clear, I think that Armored Core is a beautiful game. It is gorgeous. And while I will never impose my view on how video game is to be criticized upon anybody because we all do play games for different reasons, I am of the idea and/or the creed, god damn it, because I mentioned Assassin's Creed in my brain again. I am of the idea that art direction and our style should always trump graphics, because graphics has become the tell-it-all of whether or not a game is realistic or not. It has become the thing that most tech demos focus on when they have to showcase some new achievement that they've made in graphical improvements. Like look at the real-time facial expression, the hair growth, the lighting simulation, all that good stuff. And while they of course also do put an emphasis on how powerful our hardware have become and how the newest technology actually allows us to be more resource efficient, there still remains this obsession on how every big new releases must employ the biggest, baddest, fastest rendering technology available on the market.
But I feel like graphics are a huge part of a mech game compared to something like Elden Ring, and they gotta make that jump at some point, and I wonder when we're gonna see it.
It's an obsession that I think it should be revised, and this reassessment should also apply, I think, with regards to the use of the different engines.
I mean, they are falling further and further behind the industry by using this antiquated engine, and I wonder at what point are people gonna quit forgiving it.
Like, I do not care if you're using Unreal, Unity, RenPy, and Godot. Can you imagine a mech game in Godot? Like something looking like a freaking Cruelty Squad? Like when you're piloting your mech, both you and the in-game character will be puking their hearts out. Like accurately simulating the smallest grain of sand or having that quite accurate volumetric lighting isn't the thing that is going to make the game enjoyable. Sure, it can improve on it, but if you don't have the basis right of the mech game, which is going to be about the gameplay and the combat, then it really does not matter. Unreal Engine is quite useful, don't get me wrong. There are a bunch of games that just over the last couple of years that I've played build on it that are incredible. Something like Hook's latest release in the horror game Unholy, and or for my builders out there and all boys who are yearning for the mines, Deep Rock Galactic and Satisfactory. But since we are in the mech game territory and we're talking about Unreal Engine, I can raise a game that I've been recommended and or universe I've been recommended to get more into in the likes of Mech Warrior. I tried Mech Warrior 5 not too long ago, back when I still was on the 20 series of Nvidia, and while that game was a good enough game to me, I was not impressed with its ray tracing capabilities and whatnot. It really did not look that good to me. It was kinda like comparing the Guillermo del Toro Pacific Rim with the sequel that was made. Like, obviously something was wrong in there. I just didn't like it, but a mech game that stood out to me was one that was actually stylized, made in Unreal 2, which is Demon X Machina. I've mentioned this game before because aside from the mainline Armored Core game, this is one of the few that I would recommend to people who want to get into the mecha genre. But with its cel-shaded art, with its anime art style, it gave me that feeling, that high fantasy of the mech genre that I was yearning for. That's why other games like Hi-Fi Rush, which is also made in Unreal, is a game that stood out to people. And that is also the reason why I, for 11 years, played World of Warcraft instead of giving the chance to another MMORPG, because Blizzard, back when they had their shit together, actually did some good stuff. They were known for their hand-painted art style and great direction, and with today's technology allowing us to create more stylized game, that is something that more people are defaulting to. Not only because a stylized game will end up looking damn good in its own right, but also because it ages damn well. Like pick some random stylized PS2 game, like you're still going to call it gorgeous. And FromSoft with their proprietary engine have created games that have stood this test of time. The crazy thing being that he mentioned it himself.
I mean, gameplay-wise, the game ran smooth. I was up above 60 FPS the whole time. There were no bugs, there were no glitches, there were no crashes. Everything ran great.
So why in the hell would you want to throw that aside so to just have it in a new engine that looks slightly better, which by the way is not an easy process. I did mention Satisfactory before, and I did follow Coffee Stain Studio for quite a bit. There were a Q&A session where they once had to answer whether or not they were going to shift from Unreal 4 to 5, and asset porting is not just happening just willy-nilly. It's not just that, oh, we got a new nanite technology and things are going to just be upscaled just like that. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes porting a game to a new engine means rebuilding the entire game from the ground up. And even if that is not the case, putting a game in a new engine means extra working hours, which means delays in release date, and if a studio wants to avoid doing that, it means involving more crunch. So when you have a studio that clearly has the winning formula with a schedule that they know that they can uphold, I think that it's perhaps best to let them continue doing what they're doing until they themselves decide that it's not good enough.
See it. Obviously, Elden Ring DLC is going to still be on the Elden Ring engine, but what about the games after that? Are they going to move away from the engine that they've been using, or they can continue to use this because it's what they know and what works for them?
Now, I know that I may be overblowing this a little bit by making it into something more than it just was by me talking so much about an observation that I've made in video game discourse, but it is something that is so very glaring that it's hard to ignore. At the same time, I also want to point out that Fextralife's points are nowhere as overblown as some of the criticism that, let's say, the Ubisoft dev and whatnot said about Elden Ring in the past. But like, I kind of feel like, I don't know if it was during the note writing part of the video, perhaps scripting of it, if he did a script, or it was just talking out of his ass. Sorry, that came out negatively. But like, during the process of making this, if the words were ever matching what he was saying, because they are not, he is displaying footage of something that is looking gorgeous, complaining about things that are supposed to be flashy that...
Graphics are a little more important. Like, you want the combat to be as flashy as possible, as visually as appealing as possible.
Are damn flashy, and I'm just not seeing what he's saying. Now, I do understand that the technological advancement of the games also follows that of the hardware that we have. That is why a lot of the games are kind of forced to like engage in this like nuclear warfare type of thing where we just need to have bigger and better tech build up that we don't even need, but just in case to one up the other studio or something like that. But if the point was to shift to an engine so that we, for example, can have more rendered enemy on screens, more mechs to combat, bigger and better bosses, that we are definitely going to see some massive ones. I mean, go all the way back to the PS3 with Armored Core. Jesus Christ, like I want my Raven my Hound to be attacked by a Mongolian amount of enemies. It should look like something akin to Genocide Simulator or Dynasty Warriors. I want the power of my graphics card to be utilized on that, not simply for the game to look prettier. Because if I wanted that, like, dude, I currently have a Mikado Shinkai background, and that's just from a frame from one of his movies. And I do have that because I watched that movie for the style and not for the combat in it. Yo, can they hire Mikado Shinkai to make the next season of Baki? But there's a reason why people who are playing FromSoft games, who are playing stuff like Elden Ring, let's default back to that, which is a game that hasn't the focus on the graphics at all, but gives them the same feeling as something like Breath of the Wild. That thing of, there's a mountain in that corner, you know? See, on that edge of that map, you can go there. It's incredibly gratifying to see when the studio has their priorities in check. And I think that this obsession that we sometimes have with having things graphically better is not the best. Now, there was a point that he raised regarding the cross-platform nature of the game. Wait, did I say cross-platform? I meant cross-gen. God damn. The thing is that if they are focusing on making things cross-gen, obviously they should stop doing that. That is basically the only thing that they should stop doing, because that will immediately make them see an increase in graphical fidelity, if that is the thing that you should focus on. But yeah, that would have essentially been the short answer for this conundrum. Yeah, I know I made it way too long, but that was kind of also a talk on how, graphically speaking, we need to kind of stop obsessing about that. I think it's kind of stupid. But yeah, these were just my thoughts on this Armored Core and overall just gaming graphics drama. And please, if you have some thoughts, please leave them in the comment section below, and I see you when the game releases, and perhaps also during some Baldur's Gate stuff, because I need to play that too. So with that said though, see you guys in the next one. Bye.